I can't wait for when Piers Morgan is joining Sky News Australia and has his own show here each and every night. I will be the entree to his main meal each and every night, our program at 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight, and I'm pleased to say that at 9 o'clock after us, starting on April the 26th, Piers Morgan Uncensored will be here on Sky News Live. Now, when he was in the country a couple of weeks ago, I had the chance to sit down and just meet the new bloke. I like him. Piers Morgan, nice to meet you. Welcome to Sky News.
Very good to see you.
Now, I've always wanted to ask this, but what is the one question that Piers Morgan would most like to ask Piers Morgan?
How have you got away with it for so long? What's the secret? No, I mean, I actually interviewed myself for GQ magazine once.
Really?
Over 8 pages. And though I say it myself, it was a great interview.
I didn't know that about myself.
Yeah, and I used to ask like standard questions. I used to do big interviews for GQ. And questions towards the end of things like, what would you like on your tombstone? How do you want to be remembered? And when I actually asked myself that, it was quite an interesting moment. How do you want to be remembered? And I remember thinking, he entertained people.
Yeah.
Or he challenged people. What you don't want to be is somebody who people don't remember because you were so boring. So always be interesting, always be challenging, always be entertaining, always be mischievous, but never, ever be boring. If you want to be remembered, don't be boring.
See, when did you realise that you had a confidence that was different than other people?
I grew up in a family of very strong women, and I think that was a real reason why I've got a lot of confidence, is that they instilled in me a great sense of self-confidence. My mum, my grandmother, my sister, these are all really strong women. My grandmother was someone who lived to her mid-90s, along with 3 sisters who all lived to their mid-90s, and they were all fantastic, strong women, characters in the family. And we had a kind of sense in the family of you could achieve anything. You know, my mother sent me a postcard once of a hippopotamus flying with a flock of seagulls, and the headline was "Ambition Knows No Bounds." And I've still got that on my desk because I think that's such a brilliant message to give a child, is you can achieve anything you want in life. Because if you look at all the great achievers in life, they usually come from nothing. So anyone can do it. You just have to find what you're good at and then absolutely believe in yourself.
So then does that make it harder as a father that you have something you can hand to your kids? They grow up in a house that's different than the one that you did. So is it going to be hard for your kids?
No, because I don't give them very much. What I do give them, I hope, is a little bit of wisdom based on mistakes I've made, whilst encourage them to make mistakes. And I always said to them, when they were at school, they're all very good at various things, but they weren't all good at everything. And I used to say, look, you can fail at stuff because there'll be stuff you won't be good at. I wasn't a brilliant mathematician. You know, I'm not that good at the sciences at school and so on. But ultimately, give it everything you've got, because if you don't, you won't know what you're really good at. And if I see a lack of effort, then I'm going to be on your case. If I see you come last in a race, but I know you really tried, that's fine. If I see that you should have won a race, but you come third because you didn't put enough work in, I'm on your case, because then you're not realising your potential. But don't be afraid to try and fail. I've learnt more from failure. I mean, I subscribe to the Winston Churchill phrase, which was the real success, the definition of real success, is going from failure to failure with no discernible loss of enthusiasm. I like that.
But also when you talk about that you'd been giving it to them on Twitter, I bang on all the time on the show. Twitter isn't real life.
Not at all.
So stop thinking that it's the windsock of public opinion. But when it got into real life, serious consequences physically, but also there's something tangible. It feels like, you know, a lot of people blame social media for the explosion of wokeism. It probably sped it up. But there are a whole bunch of people who are a lot braver on the internet than they'd ever be in real life. But sadly, the people who should know the difference between Twitter and real life, companies, governments, why are they so piss poor to not know that that's not real?
Well, one of the main purposes of my show is to take on the corporate weakness in front of cancel culture, because they're getting bullied by an online mob that moves from one issue to the next. And they're very organised and they bully away, sending board members of companies endless emails and bombarding them with tweets and so on and so on. You've got to stand up. You know, I cheered when Netflix stood by Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
You know, not because I necessarily agree with everything Dave Chappelle's ever said, but he's a comedian. You know, I cheered when Spotify stood by Joe Rogan, who actually has one of the more interesting shows in the world, where he brings on people of all types, having all sort of views on life. And he says himself, I make mistakes. He apologises when he gets things wrong. All he wants to do is learn. That's supposed to be a good thing in life. And none of us would survive the cancel culture, go back through everything you've ever said in life, mentality or process.
You know, the patriarchy or systems of oppression. And that's fine, they can write essays about it, but those terms...
I don't even understand them.
But they spill into...
It's all nonsense. I mean, it's not nonsense in terms of...
But it's powerful nonsense.
Well, I've campaigned, for example, against racial injustice for many years, both in print and on television. It counts for nothing if they decide they want to call you a racist. I've never said anything racist on air. But because I didn't believe Meghan Markle's twaddle to Oprah Winfrey, that apparently made me a racist because of her skin colour. Well, does that mean you have to believe every word that someone with a non-white skin colour ever says? Of course not. It's ridiculous. Most black people I know would think that's ridiculous. So the whole arguments have been skewed here, where it's used as a kind of attack mechanism to shut down debate.
For years we've seen people with a strong opinion on telly, but they have been essentially in their own country. So right now you'd have a Tucker in the United States, you've got us at Sky News, you know, Farage in the UK. But you're going to do something that's never been done before, which is to do a global show. Do you feel like you're at the tip of the spear? Do you feel like this is the next level, that this is a real, genuine career challenge?
I feel, yeah, but I also feel it is a global thing. I think cancel culture's infested, unfortunately, large parts of the planet. And I think that most Australian people, most Brits, most Americans share my view. And by most, I mean 75, 80%. Just anecdotally, when I walk around. You know, it comes back to what you think Twitter is. Twitter is populated by 20% of the population, I think, in all three countries, maximum. And of the 20%, 10% make 80% of the noise. And they often skew ultra woke. So you get an impression on Twitter that these people are speaking for the world. They're not. They're speaking for a very narrow group of people who have a very narrow worldview. And the irony of it is they identify as liberals, and yet they know nothing about liberalism. I've studied liberalism. I wrote a book about it last year called Wake Up, back to John Locke and the history of liberalism and what it stood for. Liberalism is about the free and vibrant exchange of views. It's about freedom of speech and expression. It's about allowing someone to stare you in the face and say the complete opposite to what you believe and respecting and tolerating their right to have it. It's not about you saying something I don't like, so I have to then destroy Paul Murray. I have to ruin your life. I have to get you fired from Sky News Australia. I have to aggressively target any advertisers to make you commercially toxic. And I have to get rid of you. And then I'll move on to the next one. Because you have the audacity to say, I don't agree with you. And yet I know you not to be a bad person, but I also know you have lots of opinions. What's wrong with having opinions?
Yeah, 100%. What does success look like for this show?
I think success to me will look like if not just ratings, because the ratings metric in all three countries is very different anyway. And I found on Good Morning Britain, for example, we trebled the ratings on the show in the 5 years I was there. But more importantly, we would get up to 50 million hits on YouTube for some of my rants about this stuff, which showed me how popular my views actually are. People say to me, wow, you're so controversial. I go, which of my views actually do you find controversial? Give me an opinion I have that is controversial. I'm not racist. I'm not transphobic. I'm not homophobic. I'm not a sexist. I believe in equality for all, fairness for all. I identify as a feminist, and actually, by the 60s definition, I identify as woke. But that's no longer what woke means. So I skew, if anything, slightly, tiny bit left, possibly. I don't really like to pigeonhole myself into any politically partisan place. But I go after anyone that I think is being an extremist, an activist with the wrong motivations. All these causes which should be really good, from Black Lives Matter to Me Too to whatever it may be in the last few years, they've all been hijacked at some stage by people who use them for their own quite nefarious reasons. And that's fueled again by social media. And it damages the root cause of what they're standing for, which I support. So I think that with all these things, I want to be a platform for all views. I want people to come on and have fun. I want people, not to take any of it too seriously. But I also want the people doing the cancelling to watch this show and start to understand the absurdity of trying to pretend you're liberal in the way that they do whilst acting like fascists, because they've become the new fascists. And if at the end of all this I've managed to cancel culture or do it irrevocable damage and brought society dragged back to a place that can genuinely call itself a democracy again, with people free to express themselves in the way that they want to without fear of being gunned down, then I would have done my job. That will be what success looks like to me.
Last one. Most importantly, the people watching us right now, the viewers of Sky News Australia, the people that have seen it change, grow, bend, all the rest of it, and watch it and love it every single night. What do you want to say to the most important people?
I want to say it's about time you heard it in the right accent.
Good. Such a great bloke, such a good chat, and I'm so excited that he's going to be here each and every night, starting there on the 26th of April at 9 o'clock with us before at 8 o'clock. Piers Morgan coming very soon to Sky News.